Today's demonstration comes from a chat I had with a reader at the Peterborough BRM show, and they said, what I'd really like you to do, Phil, is I'd like you to show us how you weather a wagon. Now, we're always looking for content for the DVD, always looking for ideas, so if you've got anything you'd like to see us cover, then drop us an email or come and see us at one of the shows, and we're always happy to have a chat with you, and perhaps we can do the demo that you've been looking for. I've got a lovely, filthy Oxford Rail wagon here, and I'm quite pleased with this. It really is nice and mucky. It's a coal wagon, and therefore it should be dirty. To me, unweathered wagons just look unnatural on a layout. This is how it comes straight out of the box, and as you can see, it's bright, it's shiny, it's very pretty, but it's great for collectors. But for modelers, I like to think that we're a bit more sophisticated and we'll be looking for something a bit muckier. But I know the idea of taking this nice shiny wagon out of its box and turning it into something like that is quite scary. So let me try and demonstrate this. I'm not going to use an airbrush, I'm going to use purely hand tools, and hopefully I'll quickly run through some basic techniques. Now you can use as many or as little of these as you like. Everybody develops their own techniques, but I'll run you through some of the basics that should just get you going. The first stage is that all this lovely lettering on the side of the wagon, when the wind and the rain get at it, and bearing in mind this is a Scottish wagon, so there's going to be a lot of wind and rain, what will happen is the lettering will wear. Now how much it wears is dependent on how much, whether it's out in the wind, the rain, where it's stored, where the wagon's sat. Look at photos and you'll get a feel for it. So the simplest way to make the lettering look weathered is to use a fiberglass pencil. Now this is the same thing you would actually use for cleaning the wheels on wagons and cleaning the wheels on locomotives especially, but I'm going to use it on the wagon lettering, and as you can see I'm just going to scrub it over the surface, and gradually this will wear away the lettering, and you can see, look, it's just disappearing there. You can see that's now looking a lot more worn, and do that on the other side. It's taking the sheen off the red paint. The red paint is looking worn, it's looking tired. This will work on all sorts of buildings and other models as well. Just gives you a little bit of texture on the surface as well. This is one of these techniques as well, I should say, that works well in all scales. How much you need to do is entirely down to how dirty you want your wagon to be. But there you are, a few seconds, and already the wagon is now looking a bit more tired, and the lettering is definitely fading. You can actually use this for taking numbers off wagons and locomotives, although how well they're affixed to the model does vary an awful lot between the manufacturers. So just be a little bit cautious, and bear in mind that if you do this, you will obviously affect all the paint around it. So you might just want to bear that in mind. There are other ways of doing this. Here, I want the paint to be affected, so that's looking good. And the next stage is I want to get some dirt into all the nooks and crannies of the wagon, because if you look at your car when you've not washed it for a while, all the edges, they're filthy, and the dirt really, I want to get the dirt in all the places that are a real pain to clean it out of afterwards. Now you can use a thinned enamel paint for this, that will certainly work, a thinned acrylic. I'm using this stuff which I get from Games Workshop, which is a shading ink, and it's slightly translucent, but more importantly it's really, really good, because these guys, the Games Workshop guys, use it for emphasising shadows and creases on the armour and stuff such like of figures. All you do, pick up some on your brush, paint it onto the wagon, and it will pretty much do all the work for you. It will gather in nooks and crannies and around all around the ironwork. I just slap it all over the place. I don't care. Basically what I'm doing is I'm just adding some brown dirt. And the one thing you do know about railways, even in pre-grouping times when they did tend to look after things better, is generally everything ends up brown. If you don't clean it, it ends up mucky brown. And there we have it, a little bit of mucky brown. Now this looks quite severe at the moment. I can assure you that it will actually dry quite a bit lighter, and it won't look nearly as strong a brown on that one. But just a little brush downwards, because rain falls down and washes the dirt down the wagon, and then leave that, go away, have a cup of tea, leave that. Ideally, if I'm honest, I leave it overnight just to make sure it's dried on properly. And you get little patches where it's pulled, and it does the job rather nicely. We've gone away, we've had a cup of tea, and the ink has dried. And as you can see, it's just left a bit of dirt. You can really go to town on this. You can have more than one application of the ink will certainly make it look really, really mucky. But that's enough. Just tone the wagon down. I don't like to go for things that are too decrepit. The railway companies genuinely would have taken stuff away and fixed it and repainted it if it was really looking like a mess. So the next stage is to dry brush the wagon. Now, dry brushing is a technique where you pick up some paint on the end of a brush, and I'm using really tired old rust colour here. The stuff, it's gone a bit gloopy. It's got the consistency of Cornish cream that you might put on your scone, and I've just picked a little bit up. I'm going to wipe it off, wipe the worst of it off on this kitchen towel. When it's just about to stop coming off, I brush it over all of the ironwork especially. And what happens is the paint is then pulled off the bristles of the brush. A bit more. Paint's pulled off the bristles of the brush. A bit much there. Then it gathers on all the raised rivet detail, all the iron detail, basically anything that sticks up. It's pulled off the brush that way. And there we go, look at that. And that alone is enough weathering for a lot of people. All we've done is just highlighted the rivet detail so it looks less like a model, more like the real thing. I'm also going to work on these slightly weird white rims that manufacturers seem to like putting onto wagons. Tone those down a bit as well. Once I've worked with the rust colour, I've got some track colour. Again, everything on railways goes brown, so you know, get yourself some track colour because you're going to use it a lot. Pull a bit of pigment out of the bottom of the pot. Pick a little bit up on my brush. Work it off until it's just coming off on the kitchen towel, and then now I'm going to really go to town a bit, up and down over the whole wagon. Because this is the sort of general muck, you need to get it in and under all the brake gear and everything like that. Bit of a fiddly job. Do not use your best brush for this. I'm using an old Humbrol Colorado number 8. It's a big brush. It's got no useful point on it whatsoever, and it's absolutely perfect for this sort of job. Working up and down now because of the effect of the rain on the wagon. And so you can, you know, again, you don't want your dirt flowing left to right. You want your dirt flowing up and down. So just doing that. And how much of this you do is very much up to you. Don't try and do all your wagons the same. Do a bit of variety on there. Look, it's getting into the nooks and crannies a bit there. I think that's probably enough for a lot of people. Certainly for many years, all I did was I just dry brushed wagons and it worked absolutely fine. Everybody said, oh, how good your weathering is. And I used to be surprised because it was so easy. But that little bit of dry brushing there will do the job. Obviously, I will do the ends and the other side as well, but we're sitting here doing this for telly and nobody wants to sit and watch the whole job there. It's a coal wagon. There's a lot to be said for getting some black on there as well. But black will come with the next stage. So I'll just put the paint aside for the moment, trying to keep the studio reasonably clean, and move on to weathering powders. Now, weathering powders are essentially ground up artist pastels. You can grind up your own artist pastels, or you can just buy these things really cheaply in pots. And the reason I tend to do that is because artist pastels often come in lots of different colours. You only really want greys and blacks and browns. And so, you know, neon pink and purple, they're completely useless to us as far as weathering goes. You'll also need a fairly stiff brush for this job. This is going to be very, very messy. Work over newspaper, or at least do not work on the dining table because you will be in trouble. And I tend to work over a plastic pot. And the reason I work over a plastic pot is because this is messy and the powders themselves fall into the plastic pot and I can reuse them because I'm quite stingy like that. I've got two colours here, again from the Humbrol range. I've got their Dark Earth, which I'll just brush onto the bottom of the wagon, picking some up from the pot as well. Tend to work on that on the lower areas of the wagon. Lovely bit of texture there. People say, do you seal them afterwards? No. If you work over the paint that's just gone on like I'm doing here, it definitely is going to stick. But if I'm honest, unless you really handle your rolling stock a lot, then you're not going to have a problem with the weathering powders falling off. And if you do, the first place they'll fall off from are the very places on the real wagon where they would have got, they would have actually fallen off anyway or been worn off. Now, little trick you can do, weathering powders are dry, but just lick your finger and drag downwards and you can actually make them smear as well. A clever person would use a cotton bud and some water, but to be honest, I find a damp finger often does the job there. And you can see, look, I mean, it's really looking mucky there. I'm going to go into it with some black. This is a coal wagon after all. And if you do feel you've put too much weathering powder on, again, the wet finger technique, or even better still, a little wet brush or cotton bud will take the worst of the stuff off again. But often you can get away with just keep brushing until you're happy with the results. This is a really mucky wagon, but that's all right because that's often how the wagons were in real life. Wagons generally did not get repainted or cleaned, not like locomotives. Locomotives they looked after. Wagons left them as a bit of a mess. But you can just about see the lettering now coming through the dirt on here, which is a very mucky wagon, but I think about right for very mucky. I might be tempted to put a little bit more muck on the underframe. The underframe obviously gets muckier than the rest of the wagon. And there we have it. So pick and choose your techniques, but I say, don't be afraid of this stuff. At the end of the day, it is only toy trains, and nobody's going to get hurt if you mess up a wagon. There are always ways to put it back. I say the weathering powders will wash off if you really want them to, or at least the worst of them will wash off. And again, that's often a technique that may look like a disaster but comes out looking really fantastic at the end. I know I've done it in the past and I've saved wagons and I've gone, oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd deliberately done that. So lots and lots of options there. All the tools, none of them particularly expensive. No real expensive tools. It's not going to take you a lot of time, but practice is the key. A little bit of practice, cheap wagons, you'll be fine. I hope that helps you. And I say, always don't forget, if you've got other ideas you'd like to see us do on DVD or in the magazine, drop us an email or talk to us at shows.